Hello. Okay, The Expendables 4. This is the first Expendable movie for me to ever watch. I've not seen the previous 3 movies, but I understand what these movies are and the type of genre in which these movies are celebrating, and it's those type of movies that I grew up watching as a kid from the 80s and the 90s. And so, yeah, I'm surprised I've never seen any one of these movies yet, but The Expendables 4 is my first. So, The Expendables 4 really does lean into the cheesy 1890s action B-movies that I grew up watching as a kid and ended up falling in love with, along with the action stars like Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I really like the concept of this series and this particular movie, where it's almost like a love letter to that genre. It's celebrating that genre. And in part, there were moments within this movie that I was entertained and having fun because it taps into that nostalgia. But unfortunately, there's also a lot of moments within this movie that felt very dull, very drab, very boring, and just lifeless. The Expendables 4 is just full of two-dimensional characters that just feel very dull and lifeless. I love Stallone. I like Stallone, but within this film, Stallone is just playing Stallone. There's nothing more to the character than him just Stallone doing his thing, blowing shit up. And Statham is Statham. He's likeable. I like Statham. And a lot of the movie is put on his shoulders. But even he can't stop the movie in places, especially the third act, from becoming a very dull and boring experience. And a lot of the action within this movie, mainly the hand-to-hand combat scenes, are shot with this fucking stupid shaky cam, really close up, sort of just the way in which it's shot. The camera is really close up and they've got all that stupid shaky cam, and I'm just really not a fan of that style of filmmaking. And, it doesn't allow us to really appreciate sort of the effort that goes into these fight scenes, because there's a lot of talent involved behind these scenes with the stunt doubles and just how they're planned out. And I just I never understand why filmmakers choose to shoot these scenes like this, because for me it pulls you out of the moment. It doesn't immerse you. And there's large portions of this movie that also felt like I was watching someone playing Call of Duty as well. It felt very kind of video game-like, in which some of the action scenes played out, along with some really bad green screen. And other than catering towards those that grew up with these action stars and these type of movies from the 80s and the 90s, which I am one of those, it does nothing else compelling to get you invested into its story. Like, the whole concept of what this series is trying to do, it's there within the DNA, but that's about it. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of moments within this movie that were entertaining, that were fun, that did tap into that kind of, that nostalgia of watching these films again from the 80s and the 90s. It does somewhat tap into it successfully in parts, but unfortunately, ultimately, this movie just lacks the thrills, the impact and character of those movies that it is celebrating. And I understand what this type of movie is telling you. It's telling you to turn your brain off for 90 minutes and just be entertained and have some fun. And, be transported back to being a kid again, watching these type of movies on VHS, which I love to do. And even though it does in parts tap into that, the overall experience just really lacked the impact, the thrills and character, like I said, of those movies. You've got to have character. You've got to have characters you at least give a shit about, even if it's just a little. And characters' journeys that you can really get invested in, like having a hook, so you can actually just go along with the ride. And unfortunately, this film really doesn't achieve that. So it just goes back to sort of what I was saying about the idea, the concept of this movie. It's there in the DNA, but it just never really fully materializes into anything that it is trying to be, that kind of love letter or sort of genre that this movie is celebrating. It's kind of there, but it really fails to reach the heights of those kind of movies. I'm going to use Con Air as an example. There are a lot of characters within that movie that barely have 5 minutes screen time, but you remember them. they're iconic characters, yet they barely have any screen time. And the film, it's an immersive thrill ride with moments that you remember because you're on journeys that you're actually invested in and care about. Yeah, it's cheesy, and it's a very straightforward plot with basic characters, but it's got a hook. And you're invested into that journey because of that hook. And you have characters that are brought to life in a way that gives them character. None of the cast look bored in Con Air. And so that's the big difference between the type of movie that The Expendables is celebrating to what The Expendables actually is. The story is very predictable. Like, I guessed the villain from the first 10 to 15 minutes, and slight spoiler here, but I guessed who would return towards the end of the movie. There was just so much that I predicted, and again, it's because it's what this movie is celebrating those kind of movies, so you've seen it all before, so as a result this movie was very, very predictable, and it embraces that. And why shouldn't it? These are the type of movies that The Expendables is celebrating. It's what it's a love letter to. But ultimately the movie just ends up feeling more like a parody than a love letter to those type of movies, unfortunately. And when we get to the third act, the movie really does feel like it lacks direction. And, you get a lot of moments with Statham running around, and it's a lot of those moments actually that have reminded me of watching someone play a video game like Call of Duty. And it's in those moments that I just really struggle to remain immersed. The cinematography was quite dull and drab and just not really compelling. So yeah, the ideas are there, and I appreciate it for that. The fact that there are moments in which it does kind of take me back to being a kid again, falling in love with film for the first time, watching all these cheesy B-movie action films for the first time. It's there, but it really does lack the magic and the impact of those type of movies. Like I just said, unfortunately, the film, you could see what it's trying to do with its DNA. It's trying to be a love letter to those type of films. It wants to celebrate that type of genre, but unfortunately for me, it just felt more like a parody that lacked any impact, that really lacked any thrills. There's glimmers of what it could have been, but that's about it. So yeah, they are my thoughts on The Expendables 4, and I will be giving The Expendables 4 a 3.5 out of 10. So yeah, they are my thoughts on the latest Expendables movie, but what did you guys think? Did you love it or did you hate it? Did you agree or disagree with anything I said? Let me know in the comments below and let's get a discussion going. And if you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. If you want to see future reviews from just some random Welsh geek ramble on, then please hit the subscribe button. It will mean an awful lot to me. No One Will Save You will be my next review. It drops today, I believe, on Disney Plus. I'm really looking forward to checking that out. You'll also have a review from me for Dumb Money, and you've also got episode 7 of Ahsoka next week, a Star Wars series that I'm really enjoying at the moment. So yeah, a lot planned, a lot of videos on the way from me. I've just hit 150 subscribers over the last week. So big thank you to all of those that are new to my channel and are watching. So yeah, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it, and I'll be catching you guys soon.